حالا. هذه معمول لواحد شمال.
Good morning. I know it's the last day and people tend to stay up rather late, so I thank you all for being here. My name is Raghida Dergham, and this particular session is within the series called the Global Redesign series, and of course it's called the Future of Middle East Peacemaking. But this Global Redesign series is something that's being launched by the WEF, and we are very happy to be part of it. As you could see, I am very lucky to have an incredible panel here. And I will just introduce everyone. I think let me start from directly right next to me. We have, of course, Mr. Baird, his Congressman from the United States. Secretary Amre Moussa as the Secretary General of the Arab League. Next to him is, of course, Prime Minister Salam Fayyad of Palestine. Then we have, of course, the Prime Minister of our host country, Nader Dahabi, and the Vice President next to him of Iraq, Al-Mahdi. And last but not least, we have Alexander Saltanov, a special envoy of the President and the Prime Minister of Russia. And I thank you all for being here. Let me start out by, since the title of our part of what we want to focus on is really the new language and coming from the Obama administration. Let me start with our host country, the Prime Minister of Jordan, and ask you to think for 2 minutes, give me 2 minutes of your time to tell me if you had an opportunity to see President Obama now, and you only have 2 minutes with him, what are the things that you would absolutely put forward as a priority to ask him to do and to offer him from your point of view that you can help make this happen, whatever it is. But 2 minutes, and I'm going to go through this with everybody at the panel. Please.
Thank you, Raghida. As a matter of fact, I've met President Obama months ago accompanying His Majesty King Abdullah in our last visit to the United States. What I would tell him actually is anybody here in the area would tell him that we would like him to go ahead with the two-state solution as he is adopting this, but we would like to emphasize this is the core of the issue here in this part of the world. Would like to ask him to use his good offices with the strategic partner of the United States, Israel, to seize the establishment of new settlements in the occupied territories, to improve the living conditions of the Palestinians, to convince the Israelis that time is ripe now to go ahead with negotiations, no more process, but negotiations to start in this part of the world. This is in the national interest of the United States. It's an international interest for everybody in the world to end up what we are looking for in this part of the world is to come up with two-state solution, a Palestinian viable state which can endure and it will live side by side in peace with its neighbors.
What would you offer him?
What would you offer him? We could offer him the recognition of Israel by 57 Arab and Muslim states. We can offer him a deposit by many of the Arab states that they will go into confidence building measures. And as you know that Israel security is US international interest, and we will convince him that Israel will live in security and peace in this area.
Prime Minister Fayyad, precisely what is it that you would have, how would you use these 2 minutes?
Thank you, Raghida. First of all, I would say that, as is well known, it is widely expected that the United States administration is about to come up with some ideas as to how to move the process forward once current round of meetings with regional leaders is over with. What I would say to Mr. Obama is, regardless of his choice or his administration choice of the approach to reviving the peace process will be, it is of paramount importance that focus be given and directed toward what needs to be done now to impart credibility to that peace or peace negotiations framework. Hence, what I really would focus on is the need to insist on full compliance with the requirements for success, specifically obligations under the roadmap. The parties accepted in spring of 2003, commitment to which was reaffirmed at Annapolis in November 2007. It is of paramount importance for that process, which is expected to be relaunched soon, for it to be bolstered and supported by actions on the ground now. Specifically, on the Israeli side, this requires immediate, comprehensive settlement freeze. It also requires that there be a commitment to refrain from incursions, military incursions in areas under the Palestinian Authority control. These are actions that are required, not as a matter for negotiation, actions that should be done immediately. In addition, there has to be serious consideration of activation or implementation of all issues related to access and movement in the context of the 2005 Agreement on Movement and Access. That's what I really would insist on.
And
in order for there to be credibility, in order for people to begin to believe that this process is going to take us somewhere, because no one, although we definitely are interested in a resolution to this conflict today, before tomorrow, before the day after, nevertheless, no one has control over when that might happen. The critical issue here is to ensure that when actual agreement is reached, it can be implemented. The way things have been going, particularly after Annapolis, is not very encouraging. It definitely should be reversed.
But also, there is expectations by the administration of you. Give me quickly, what is the priority of what you can offer? We have time to discuss it in details, but what do you offer?
As far as we're concerned, this is about ending the occupation that happened in 1967 and establishing an independent, viable, sovereign Palestinian state on the territories occupied in 1967. As far as we're concerned, Palestinians, our biggest preoccupation and challenge is to build that Palestinian state, to build the functioning, strong, competent institutions of the state. That's what we have been preoccupied with. That's what we have been doing. When it comes to our own obligations under the roadmap, usually the focus is on security, which is extremely important also from our point of view. Security is never complete until it is complete for both Israelis and Palestinians. As everyone knows, since mid-2007, we have made great strides toward restoring law and order in the West Bank, and I hope it will be possible for us, as a matter of highest priority, to reunite our country and do the same in Gaza. We have done that, and we have also, as a matter of fact, made very good deal of progress toward building strong and competent institutions of state. That's our most important obligation.
Vice President Al-Mahdi, you have 2 minutes, priorities, what do you want out there in your 2 minutes with President Obama?
Okay, thank you, Raghida. I will ask that Americans would stick to the plans of the agreement.
Mike, please.
That
You will ask.
United States will stick with the plans to withdraw from Iraq by the end of 2011, and then to put pressure on Israel for the Arab initiative, to go forward in the Arab initiative. And thirdly, to encourage him to go forward with a dialogue with Iran. And then fourthly, I will urge him to be more just with Arab and Muslims in the United States and elsewhere, and in all the dimensions. This is what I will really urge him to do.
And you would say, here's what I have to do to support you. What is it?
Well, stability in the region, peace in the region.
Your role.
Our role in Iraq, elsewhere in the region. You know, there is an anti-Americanism movement here in the region because of long years of injustice, especially in the Palestinian issue, but also on other issues. So this will be beneficial to all parties, including the United States. Investment, reconstruction, stability in the region, instead of dispensing billions of dollars on wars, this could be used on other uses.
Minister Saltanov, you are starting on a new relationship with the United States in the post-Bush era. You've been having meetings. Again, what would be your priority to ask the President of the United States to do, and what would Russia be willing to do to help that discourse?
Okay, thank you. Well, I also have an opportunity to accompany my minister, Mr. Lavrov, when he visited Washington and met President Obama. I would say that we have a very good conversation there, and we feel that this new administration is very serious and sincere about finding the way to solve the problems of the region. What would I say? That first of all, we should imply joint efforts in helping the region to start to march to stability. Secondly, we need to have a comprehensive approach to difficult problems of the Middle East, including, of course, the Arab-Israeli conflict, the problem of the proliferation or non-proliferation, as you wish, extremism, social problems, economic, and others. And I would suggest that we must go within the understanding that the security in the world and in the Middle East is indivisible. It's enjoyed by each country or by nobody. And from this prospect, from this point of view, we should apply our efforts to help to find out a solution, first of all, for the core issue, I mean the Palestinian problem, and the comprehensive solution, comprehensive settlement for the Arab-Israeli conflict.
And would Russia be indispensable in the effort that you are putting forward?
Yes, of course, no doubt about that.
I thought
so. Well, and I can tell you that we in the framework of the quartet, we are working together with the United States, with the European Union, with the UN, and with the Arab League Committee. And we hope that during these months, forthcoming months, the activities of the quartet will be much more visible. Thank you.
Congressman Baird, you would go back to the region, you will say to President Obama, Mr. President, here's what I really think we should do. And Mr. President, here's what I'm going to try to do within the Congress to help you do it. What would that be?
I would say, first of all, listen to what was just said. It's certainly consistent with what I've heard. There is a tremendous opportunity. I think the President started so well with calls to Abu Mazen, appearances on El Arabiya, appointment of Mr. Mitchell as a special envoy. But the region now, I think, is looking for further tangible action. And we know the course to take. I believe it needs to be immediate cessation of settlements. This is one member of Congress speaking. Immediate cessation of settlements, more and immediate relief to Gaza, removal of many of the checkpoints, or at least reduction, so there's more freedom of movement and commerce, certainly within the West Bank. Continued support for Salam, Fayyad, and Abu Mazen, and fundamentally demonstrate that moderation, security leads to a better way of life. So on that side, I think we have to show tangible movement and insist upon that. It is not enough to just talk now. It is time to insist, for our government to insist, that we believe these causes are just, we believe they're essential for the security of the region, and they're essential to our own security. At the same time, on the other side, I think it is fair to emphasize the Arab Peace Initiative, but to say that there needs to be something more than just diplomatic recognition. There has to be a fundamental mutual assurance of existential security for all parties.
Congress, I mean, you are a difficult bunch there. I mean, you really don't help the administration much. It's, at least we have an impression that Congress is partial. So what would you say you would do within the Congress in order to help him out?
Well, myself and Senator Kerry have both been to Gaza. I hope to go again very shortly, and we are bringing other members there. And I think that is a powerful message right there of members willing and interested in coming and seeing on the ground. And I will tell you, I think There have been not only changes in the administration, but changes in the Congress, important committee structure changes, and a gradually evolving attitude. And I think there's a real recognition in Congress, first of all, a commitment to a two-state solution. I think there's a strong sense in Congress that the settlements need to stop. I think there's an awareness of the urgency of more humanitarian aid to Gaza. And finally, a realization that unless we have viable economic independence and opportunity for the Palestinians, the solution is, it's important to provide the financial aid, but that alone is not enough. There has to be something tangible to allow the Palestinian Authority to move its own economy forward.
Secretary General Amre Moussa, surely you will have a list of what you would like President Obama to do, but could you also focus at what are you offering him? Besides, I know you have the Arab Peace Initiative on the table, but instead of, is this the only thing that you harp on, or is there something else that you can offer in your 2 minutes with Obama?
Well, I would concentrate on 3 things. Number 1, to thank him for the new spirit and the positive atmosphere he has created by calling for change, for dialogue, and for solutions. Second point, I would refer to the situation in this region, unstable and dangerous. The door for it is to properly address the Arab-Israeli conflict, in particular the Palestinian question. And that for Palestine, or for the whole situation to be properly tackled, there must be a Palestinian state, a viable Palestinian state, and a comprehensive peace that should, by necessity, involve Syria and Lebanon. At the same time, in order to do that, there is one point that should be considered a sine qua non, which is the settlements. It's not a question of freezing the settlements, but this should be coupled with the dismantling of the outer posts at least. The Israelis themselves, the court system has ordered or considered several settlements as illegal. That is in their own words. So they have to start dismantling the settlements by whatever they consider illegal. We consider them all illegal, but by their own measurement. So the question of settlements is a sine qua non for negotiations. I cannot imagine a process of negotiations going on while Israel is building settlements. This is our mistake that we have accepted that before. So this is the second point. The third point is about his speech in Prague, in which he called for a world free from nuclear weapons. This has a certain reference to our region, and I would call on him to establish as soon as possible a dialogue with Iran. Not that I accuse Iran of having a military program, because according to the IAEA reports, there is no program so far. But there are other problems, and also the fear, the concern that there would be a program, etc. But please, as quickly as you can, go on, establish a dialogue. But when you talk about, as you talk about, a world free from nuclear weapons, we talk about a Middle East free from nuclear weapons. And here, there is an Israeli dimension. Please, Mr. President, we need a fair and a positive dealing with this question. Do not talk about Iran while leaving Israel on the side. So we need a region free from nuclear weapons as quickly as we can, as part of the change that we need to effect in the Middle East.
Well, let me actually stick to this point a bit. Do we have, or are you having too much expectations from President Barack Obama in the sense of what he can deliver, what he's able to deliver? When you go as far as saying, I want to put this on the table, are you saying this for consumption, for the applause, or do you really think this is a possibility, and within what time frame? Because I think Congressman Baird might tell you that in the United States, this potential is almost, you could almost rule it out.
I take what President Obama has said very seriously. And I believe we have a chance. Peace has a chance with Mr. Obama. As for the time frame, it is this year, 2009.
For
there
what?
Must be a
for
progress
what?
here.
To be precise, what are you talking about? 2009
I'm talking
for what?
about moving on the question of the Arab-Israeli conflict, in particular the Palestinian question. If there will be no move in the foreseeable future and action, not just talk, not just an initiative to be announced, that is not enough. That gone are the days of initiatives and paperwork and so on. Now we need action. This action has to start this year. If this year goes by without any progress or any serious action, then it will join the previous years of 08 and 07 and 06, and our hopes will just dwindle.
Congressman Baird, can President Obama really deliver, knowing really the pressures that exist in the United States and the confinement of the American role when it comes to Israel? Israel is a domestic issue in the United States. Can you be precise with us and tell us, can he deliver?
I believe he can, and I believe he's committed to it. And I believe he'll have the support of the American people and the Congress. I think the issues of Palestine, two-state solution, 67 borders, it will be, I think there are some, the details may be somewhat difficult, but if we agree to those principles, I think we can get there. I share the concern about an eventual goal of denuclearization for the world. I would not add that to these negotiations. I don't think you'll get there until there has been a protracted period of peaceful coexistence, existential security. I think it should be on the table eventually. I would certainly not recommend adding that in at this point. The dialogue with Iran is essential, but I think don't add that to the Palestinian-Israeli negotiations.
Prime Minister Fayyad, there is always that notion of what the United States should do and what the United States can do. Can you tell me your thoughts as to what you think President Obama should do instead of remaining within the parameters of what he can do?
I would say that he should insist on accountability and bringing it into the process in a very serious way. This is not an easy conflict to resolve, as evidenced by the fact that it's been going on for decades and has eluded resolution. Nevertheless, I think for issues to continue to be allowed to drift in the manner they have been, without insisting on serious accountability, I believe that would be the wrong way to go. My advice again would be that he should insist on the parties implementing their obligations that they have entered into. They committed to, they affirmed that commitment to the obligations. And that, it seems to me, what is required in order for there to be seriousness. Otherwise, we continue to discuss issues in the abstract. It is very important for there to be action immediately on the issues that I mentioned before. As in the case, for example, what's the point in continuing to allow the situation in Gaza being what it is? What's the point in allowing the situation in Gaza to continue to be a state of siege, complete siege, as has been going on for a very long time, actually very tight case of it since mid-2007. There is no point in allowing these issues to continue to go in the way they have been, while talking about issues in general terms. In order for there to be regional stability and peace, in order for this region to cease being the kind of problem it has been for world stability and peace, it's about time that the parties be asked and expected to implement that which they had committed themselves to implementing. That's how I think President Obama can begin to make a difference.
Prime Minister Nader Dahabi, Jordan has been at the forefront of telling us how serious the issue of the Palestinians should be, that whereas the Israelis say, do Iran first, Jordan had carried the message to Washington to say, you got to really do the Palestinian issue first. Let me ask you precisely, there's a lot of movement going in through Amman and out of Amman. Do you have in mind any such thing, such as an international conference of a certain different comprehensive nature? Is it something like a Camp David approach? Is it something like a more of a, if you will, Madrid approach? What is next in terms of that movement that you are very involved with?
Okay. As I mentioned earlier, Raghida, that time is of essence right now, and we cannot lose this time. We have the Arab Peace Initiative in our hands, and the Palestinians are backed by all the Arab countries and the Muslim countries, and we don't like to see more facts on the ground, more settlements on the West Bank, more excavations in Jerusalem, more outposts, etc. So what I think that something like, I hate to say Camp David, but something of this nature, that the United States, the presidents of the United States can call upon all parties, Palestinians, Syrians, Lebanese, Israelis, to go there and sit there and talk to each other and try to reach something which shows us the end of the way. Without this, I don't think, as His Majesty said, we don't want to go in new processes. We would like to go directly into negotiations, sit down together, iron out our differences, define what we want. From our side, I think a Palestinian, a viable, sustainable state is the end game that we are looking for. Security of Israel is very important and will be guaranteed by all parties. Normalization of what we say, dealing with Israel by all Arab states and by Muslim states, recognition by all these countries. I think the most important issue is to take them, all of them together, to Washington, to sit down there and try, not to put pressure, but to coach them and to tell them that enough is enough, let's sit down and get some results.
Minister Saltanov, would this undercut Russia's idea of a conference in Moscow, or would this be complementary? What do you think of this? And I want, after you finish answering this, I want to move to Amre Moussa. Go ahead, please.
Me?
Yes, no, I mean, absolutely you.
Well, first of all, I would like to tell that we should think about multilateral efforts to help to restore or to resume the negotiations. No doubt that the United States is a very important key player, non-regional player. But don't forget that all previous attempts to reach an agreement without complementary or joint efforts from other parties didn't bring a lot of results. That's why we are thinking about multilateralism, we're thinking about comprehensive approach, and from this point of view, we proposed the idea of Moscow Conference. Everything had been said already in Madrid, in the United and Security Council resolutions, in roadmap, in the quoted statements. Now we need a political will to resume the negotiations. Of course, the main responsibilities laid down on the shoulders of the parties concerned, parties involved in the conflict. But the world society, the world community should help to resume the negotiation process. How we see a new conference as an event which mustn't be, as Minister Lieberman said, a butaphoric event, but practical step towards a real political process on all tracks: Palestinians, Israeli-Palestinian, Israeli-Syrians, Israeli-Lebanese, and of course on the track where the common interests of all parties are joining: security, economy, and some other issues. But no doubt that without a real progress on bilateral tracks, it would be very difficult, if impossible, if it's possible, to restart the discussion on general problems. We understand.
Thank you. I want to move on to other issues, but I have two people who want to come in with a quick comment, Amre Moussa and then Salam Fayyad.
Well, I want to build on what Prime Minister Dahabi and Ambassador Saltanov have just said. Now, any meeting of that, at that level, with heads of state and leaders, with the Prime Minister of Israel, has to be well prepared. And as a basic point, they should not meet with him if settlements continue. The same days that they are sitting with him. And the villages are Arab villages, and some of them are demolished, building settlements, changing the demographic composition, changing the geographical character. At the same day, this shouldn't happen. This has to be a precondition. If they do that, they are on record rejecting the two-state solution. They are on record rejecting any intervention or any advice that they should stop settlements. So a freeze on settlements should be a precondition for anything that takes place. Otherwise, we, the Arabs, will be defeating our own purpose.
Prime Minister Fayyad.
Yes, quickly on the question of conference or Moscow conference, I'd remind everyone that for the better part of last year, we wanted very much that Moscow conference to be convened, particularly to draw attention to what was going on, which is total non-compliance with the commitments made at the time of Annapolis. Now I think the bar should be set higher. I don't think that parties should be summoned to a meeting. Actually, last year we were told we do not want a meeting for the sake of meeting, we do not want photo op. I'd say the same thing now. In order for us to see some promise coming out of any international meeting, conference, partly on Palestine, issues that require implementation, that are overdue for implementation, should be implemented before we begin to really think seriously about going anywhere. Finally, a word of caution. We know where things stand on the question of recognition of the two-state solution and accepting that. It is my assessment that sooner or later, Prime Minister Netanyahu will have to make an adjustment in the direction of acknowledging or accepting the two-state solution. What I would caution against is when that happens, and I surely hope that will happen sooner rather than later, there should not be that much euphoria, that now that he has recognized the two-state solution as a concept for a solution, everything's settled. Everything is not settled. If he actually were to say the words, he, number one, has to say them very clearly and unequivocally as required under the roadmap. We Palestinians have delivered on that commitment, repeatedly affirming it time and again. And what did we get in return in 1993? We did not get recognition by Israel of our right to statehood on 22% of historical Palestine. What we got in return for recognizing Israel on 78% of Palestine was the right to represent, for the PLO to represent. I think that should end. So when he actually comes around to accepting the two-state solution, number one, he has to be clear on that. Two, he has to be immediately told that there are requirements that he actually should implement immediately that settlement freeze as called for under the roadmap.
But what if he won't?
Pardon?
What if he won't accept any of this? This is a government that that has an ideology.
I think
so what if this doesn't happen? We're talking about action-oriented, looking forward, what to do. What if he doesn't?
Today, for example, I could see there was an item on the news this morning saying that Prime Minister Netanyahu is going to Washington accepting the notion of beginning negotiation on a two-state solution. That's dancing around the issues. That's not an unequivocal acceptance of the two-state solution as a concept for resolution. That concept should not be squandered. That international consensus, which obtained in the summer of 2002 on the need for this issue to be resolved on the basis of two-state solution, should not be squandered. I agree. I mean, he may actually balk at it. He may take too long. He may use language that's not sufficiently clear. The point of this is the following. In order to bring about compliance, I think there has to really be, in addition to what the parties are told about incentive to doing the right thing, there has to be serious consideration of what might happen if they continue, if they were to persist in not complying, in not delivering on commitments. That's very clear. This requires action. This requires action by major trading partners, for example, with Israel, the EU, the United States, on considering their policies on, for example, settlement exports, participation in settlement activity in any kind, investment in those. There's been some progress on that within the EU. For example, United Kingdom, I can give you as an example of that, beginning to seriously consider how to go about labeling settlement products. There's huge political signal associated with all of that. And I think had the world acted this way, I believe the issue of settlement activity would have featured a lot more prominently in the Israeli election. It didn't. Alas, why? Because the world continued to accept a situation where there are commitments that continue to go without being complied with.
Permit me to go to Vice President. I'm sorry, I just got to move on to other issues, and then you could come in when I ask you to the Vice President. Can you tell me what is your thought when you hear of new security arrangements in the region? Senator Kerry spoke about that the other day here at the WEF at the Dead Sea. There is talk about a new security order in the region. Where does Iraq fit in this? What sort of Iran is in that order? What do you know?
Well, my understanding to this, Iraq can't have a special understanding on security arrangements in the region if it is not global, if all parties are not included, all countries of the Middle East, the big Middle East is included. That's why what I understand from security arrangements that Iran, Turkey, and Arab countries should be included in those arrangements. Excluding any of them, then we wouldn't have real security arrangements. We will have some axes working one against the other with a certain international umbrella supporting one side against other sides. So if security really is the goal and the target of our action, all countries should be there and all hot issues should be discussed, including the nuclear issue in the region, as Amre Moussa said. So this is my understanding to the security arrangements.
So when you say all countries, Mr. Vice President, I know that you mean, of course, Arabs and Iran, probably Turkey,
I said that, yes.
But do you mean also Israel at the same table?
Of course, it should be included in that. That's why I supported what Amre Moussa said. We can't let Israel as a nuclear power working there and others are disarmed of any kind of arm. So if we want a clear and net region, clear of massive destructive weapons, including the nuclear weapons, so all countries should be included. That's right.
And let me go to the Congressman. Maybe you have in mind a clearer idea from your point of view as to what would be the new security order, new security arrangements in the region that you are working on. Are you working on this actively? What are the steps towards such a new order?
A study presented here and gaining increasing currency talks about $12 trillion cost to the region of the instability of the ongoing conflict. One has to grieve the loss of opportunity there, how much human life, how much resources, what the many challenges facing this region. We can't afford to have $12 trillion wasted. And I think as Iraq moves forward, I think we also need to say it's clear the status of forces agreement is moving American forces out of Iraq, hopefully at a pace that will allow the Iraqi security and political structure to achieve stability. But as the U.S. pulls out, there will need to be a regional participation in filling that void, establishing more rapid trade agreements, making sure the economic structure works, making sure that the political participation, you know, I'm personally of the belief that we overuse the word democracy, and we need to talk much more about fundamental human rights, constitutional protections, those sorts of things. Merely having an election and saying majority rule doesn't necessarily guarantee a successful process. In fact, people who wrote our Constitution were very concerned about that.
But the fora of such a new order, or is it going to be in a conference? Is it going to be in speaking individually? I understand that you would want, for example, Russia and China and the United States and Europe to be part of offering Iran some sort of guarantees so that Iran can be persuaded not to pursue its nuclear ambitions. Are you already in discussions with the Russians on that?
I can't speak for what the administration is. You know, I think it's useful to put that in the context of the topic of the WEF and this issue of redesigning the world to some extent. If we play it out at
Be careful of what you're saying.
Well, but no, I mean, this is the theme of the discussion to some extent. It is the WEF is looking at alternative ways to look at these conflicts. If we all view it through the great game kind of model at some level, major powers using competing interests, it seems that hasn't worked that well.
Minister Saltanov, where are you on this? Yes, we absolutely need to hear Russia's point of view on the new security order in the region.
Well, we have our concept. We spread it among the Gulf countries. As a beginning, because as I said, the security in any place, and in the Middle East especially, is not is indivisible. What we are thinking about? We are thinking about how to guarantee the sovereignty, territorial integrity, and non-interference into internal affairs for each country of the area. Iran, Iraq, Arab countries of the Gulf, maybe some others. But to make arrangements in this direction, we should, of course, previously solve some problems. We must have a clear picture of about the Iranian nuclear programs. Of course, the process of the national reconciliation in Iraq should continue to speed up. We must think about establishing the zone in the whole area of the Middle East free of all arms of the weapons of mass destruction, not only nuclear. And steadily, step by step, we think that at the end we will arrange something similar to Organization of the European Security and Cooperation. But it is a process. It's a process which will take time, but it's better to start now, earlier than later.
This brings, I mean, this issue of new order security arrangements has unleashed at least some anticipation in the region. People are talking about what sort of a deal is being organized, who's being sacrificed, which country is being scapegoated, who's going to be the prominent leader in the region. All of this has led to quite a lot of anticipation and worry on one hand. On the other hand, some have been hopeful about it, that that's going to bring a new page of coexistence. Everybody would love each other and will live happily ever after. So what do you think about that, Amre Moussa?
Well, there is one point Ambassador Saltanov was referring to, which is the nuclear situation in the region as part of the regional security. Well, here it has to be clear that the nuclear situation in Israel has to be tackled on the international level. It is not a point to negotiate with us. This is an international obligation to join the NPT and to join the efforts of nuclear disarmament. This is not a matter to negotiate and take a price because of it. This is one point. That's the first point. Second point, all other talks pertaining to regional security, apart from this obligation on Israel to join the NPT, the rest of it should be negotiated in the light of the solution of the Arab-Israeli conflict. not before it, but based on it and the results, whether there is a Palestinian state or not. If there is a Palestinian state, there is a place, there should be a place for the Israeli state. If there is no Palestinian state, then we have to stop and consider what kind of role should Israel take. Perhaps no role at all.
I think
Secretary Moussa, of course, we can't talk about the security in the area without having an independent Palestinian state, without all measures aiming to make this region free of all weapons of mass destruction. That's right, there is an NPT, but there are some other international conventions on chemical weaponry, on biological weaponry, and others. We should think on all issues in complex.
Prime Minister Dahabi?
I think the new security order is talking about the new approach by the United States, which is regional approach right now. They are not looking just at the settlement of the Arab-Israeli conflict between the Palestinians and the Israelis, the Syrians and the Israelis, the Lebanese and the Israelis, but they're looking at the nuclear program of Iran as well. I think each country in this part of the world is entitled to have access to nuclear technology for peaceful purposes, not for military purposes. But at the same time, we have to tell everybody that this part of the world, the Middle East, has to be clear of a nuclear military power. Everybody has to sign the non-proliferation treaty for nuclear arms. So I think what they are talking about is let's have a regional approach to the whole issues in this part of the world, especially after the United States troops would withdraw from Iraq. You know, Iran is playing a role in Afghanistan, in Iraq, and with the Arab-Israeli conflict. So we have to tackle all these issues together in a package term.
Congressman, you wanted to come in, but I just really would like you to address this issue of redesigning the region and making a deal and who's going to be scapegoated. You know what I'm talking about. You've heard enough of it, unless you want me to be detailed on it.
Well, I want to address the nuclear issue for just one moment. I think it's absolutely important. You know, the earlier question was, how much is the Congress willing to go and where's the Obama administration? Unless the existential threat to security, it is one thing to say, and I think we should say, stop the settlements. You've heard me say it. John Kerry has said it. Others have said it. But you have to, at some point, assure your neighbor that their security is also respected. If someone next to you is calling for your destruction, to then say, disarm, is unrealistic. It's impractical and it won't succeed. On both sides, you have to secure that the other side will be safe. And I think one of the things that has to happen, we talked a little bit about deposits. It's absolutely important for the Arab world to say, we insist on these measures on the part of Israel, but we in turn are willing and committed, not just willing, but committed to doing this, assuring the security of Israel. And that includes denouncing rocket attacks. It includes denouncing people who say we're going to wipe Israel off the earth. That just cannot happen. It's not a civilized way to conduct ourselves, and you cannot expect either Israel or the U.S. Congress to say we're going to insist on these other measures unless there's the deposit on the other side. And I just have to emphasize that.
Before I take questions from the audience, Vice President of Iraq, tell me, where is Iran in your view? How do you see Iran in this redesigned region? Do you see Iran accepting to give up its nuclear ambitions? Do you see Iran reducing its interest in a larger role? Where you're right next door and pretty much know them better.
Seen from the Iraqi side, we want, of course, a deep, friendly relationship with Iran. Iran is very important to Iraq and to the region. Of course, no interference policies should apply not only to Iran, but to all the others. And I had a comment on what the congressman said before. really developing the other idea. Of course, peaceful tools should be used, but also we should not give time, the time to the others to create a de facto situation as Israel is doing now. Negotiation, talking, etc. But there's a reality developing, and when we will have one day a settlement, the reality on the ground is different. So it's not only a question of rockets and a question of letting the other live in peace, but also creating new conditions. So I think as Arabs, they launched the peace initiative, just. Then there should be a certain timetable. We can't wait forever, and then the leading word will be time and a de facto situation. That's why on the, yes?
No, go ahead, please. I was just going to, go ahead.
Yes, but you are pointing like that.
No, I'm pointing because I want you to get back to Iran. Please, if you don't mind, on Iran, the issue of Iran.
Yes, of course, but
I just want you to continue.
This is related. We all agree that we need a global vision on that. So we can't discuss the Iranian issue out of the other issues. There is a historical reason for that. Iran in the Shah's period is different than Iran in the Islamic period. Arab world had good relations with Iran at the Shah period. Now because of regional agendas and international agendas, then it's different. We have to settle this as neighbors, no interference policies, friendly relationship, and then looking after whether Iran is for a nuclear weapon or its research are for the peaceful.
So what do you say to people who think that Iran got the trophy, its trophy in Iraq, and that Iran got its trophy in Iraq, and that Lebanon will be the crown jewel for Iran's ambitions in the region? Why don't you tell me what you think of that?
In 2004, they told us that you have 4 million Iranians. People are really confused about that. Iran has the longest borders with Iraq, 1,300 kilometers with Iraq. They always had good presence in Iraq, as much as Turkey and the Arab world, you see. As Iraqis, we are a sovereign country. We always had our word in history and now. We wouldn't let any kind of interference coming either from Iran or from Turkey or from other countries, you see. Interests, this is something else.
Okay. I have a panel here that has been assigned to make a couple of observations, but I don't know where they're sitting. Can you raise your hands? Okay. I'm not going to take all of you. Can you choose one of you who wants to make a quick comment and make it really quick? Introduce yourselves, because I have people in the audience who want to come in and time is running short. So choose one and introduce yourself, please.
On? Okay. My name is Mahmoud Jabari. I'm Palestinian and a member in the Global Changemakers team. My question to Mr. Amre Moussa. Dr. Amre, we have been talking to the American administration since a long time, and we are optimistic for Obama presidency. And Israel is still using the time. I wonder, where is the real Arabic steps to face the Israeli using of time in imposing the facts on land? Another point to Dr. Salam Fayyad, our Prime Minister, is how do you see a Palestinian state through the facts that Israel has been imposing on land since the peace process had stopped?
Prime Minister Fayyad, you want to take it first?
Well, that's obvious, said Mahmoud. Actually, what has been going on the ground is definitely counter to what is required in order for there to be an independent, viable, sovereign Palestinian state on the territories occupied in 6/7, Gaza Strip, West Bank, including East Jerusalem. Facts on the ground created by Israel that are illegal under international law are illegal under international law. More of them does not make them right. What we really need to do, as best as I can perceive, is to persevere in our effort to create positive facts on the ground, to persevere in our national effort aimed at building the institutions of the state. So that's our version of what requires to be done. So whenever somebody looks in the direction of Palestine, I hope no longer than a couple of years down the road, they'll be able to say, yes, indeed, the Palestinians do have what looks like a serious state in many areas of governance, measuring up to good international practices and standards, certainly regional standards and practices. What is there to prevent and stop the Palestinians from actually enjoying that which is universally recognized as an absolute right for all people around the world, to live in a free country of our own? That, I believe, is what we really should continue to do in the face of what Israel continues to do, all the while continuing to engage effectively with the international community. That is how I see that we should continue to move.
Secretary General Amre Moussa.
Thank you, Mahmoud. I believe the time factor is essential. And we have already conveyed this point, that we are not ready for an open-ended process or procrastination and practices of wasting time as we have witnessed in the last 16 or 17 years of the so-called peace process. That's why we emphasized the point of this year has to witness progress. King Abdullah of Jordan has emphasized this point in his meeting with President Obama. On the question of the shortness of time, the window of opportunity will not be open forever. And it's not only forever. Within the year 2009, we must see progress, action in the right direction, something that we have not seen in the last decade and a half. So in the next 4 to 5 weeks, if there is no new plan or offer, we'll start rethinking. Were we a bit too much optimistic or not?
What are your options?
So in the end, it's a matter of sequencing, as the King Abdullah has emphasized. That first, we need freeze on settlements. Second, we can meet, we can talk, we can do whatever. This is the first thing. This is the position we need, we want. And the United States have expressed that, the Congressman, the Senator Kerry, and others. Now, the ball is in the Israeli court. Let us see what they would come up with in the next few weeks.
Thank you. I want to take a few questions, and I'm going to go to John first because he was the first. If you don't mind, again, announce who you are, direct your question to a particular person if you can help it, and be as precise and short as possible, please.
My name is John Chipman. I'm the Chief Executive of the International Institute for Strategic Studies in London, and I have a specific proposal to put to the panel on how to engage the region more effectively with Iran. At present, the discussions with Iran on the nuclear issue are conducted by the 5 members of the Security Council plus Germany, or put another way, by France, United Kingdom and Germany, Russia, China, and the United States. In North Korea, on the nuclear file, the regional states were involved, China and Japan and South Korea. We have all talked here about regional engagement in the principal issues of the area. My specific proposal is if there is to be an effective discussion with Iran on this question, it shouldn't be 5+1. It should be 5+1+3. And my specific proposal is that the 3 additional countries that should be negotiating with Iran on this question are the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, Turkey, and Egypt. Why? All 3 of these countries are unanimously considered by the pundits in the world as countries that might reconsider their own options were Iran's nuclear ambitions confirmed. All 3 of these countries would be essential if Iran did get a nuclear weapon to be part of some kind of containment strategy. And finally, all 3 of these countries, Saudi Arabia, Egypt, and Turkey, are very influential in bringing a regional consensus on a future regional security structure. And Iran would be quite interested if they found these 3 countries on the other side. So my proposal for Amre Moussa and for Minister and Special Envoy Saltanov and for Congressman Baird is if we are serious about having multilateral negotiations, regional security problems solved by the region, shouldn't Egypt, Turkey and Saudi Arabia be formally involved in these discussions?
Thank you, John. A specific proposal on the table, but I'm going to take 3 other questions, and then I'm going to get to the panel. Yeah, go ahead, Rima. Please introduce yourself.
Thank you. My name is Rima, and my question is addressed to the Senator. Recently, there have been many demands of the Palestinians to recognize Israel as a Jewish state. Of course, the term Jewish state was also used by American administration and members of the Congress. We Arabs have been accused of resisting American policies based on preconceptions. That's why I'm seeking clarification from you on what you mean by a Jewish state. 2 possibilities. By a Jewish state, do you mean that Israel should be given a waiver to discriminate against non-Jews, Israelis who are Muslims or Christians? Or do you demand that in a Jewish state, all people will be equal before the law and under the law? And briefly, do you believe in the ethnic and religious purity of states in our time? Thank you.
Thank you. I think, please say who you are, and then...
Yeah, Mohammed Jahmani, good morning. Your Excellency, Amre Moussa, one question with an answer with yes or no. But please, from your heart, sincerely, do you believe what so-called Israel is a true peacemaking partner? And another question with yes or no to His Excellency Fayyad, with yes or no and sincere, do you believe what was taken by power will be retained one day with peace negotiation and talk, or only power can retain what was taken by power? And to the America, one message, because we don't talk a lot with Americans, we're Syrians. Before...
Yes, you do.
Before, please.
Yes, you do. Recently, a lot.
Before you come to our region and reorder our region, go back to your own country and reorder it. It needs a lot of reordering.
Mr. Ghandour. Yeah.
My name is Ali Ghandour from Jordan. I would like to ask Amr Moussa, if Israel refuses the Arab peace initiative and they refuse the 2-state solution, they refuse withdrawal from the Golan Heights, and they refuse the withdrawal from some Lebanese occupied territories, what can the Arabs do? We are in a status quo situation whereby the Israelis don't want peace and the Arabs don't want to fight. They don't want war. This is where we are right now. When I talk to some Arab activists, friends of mine, and I tell them about the status quo, they say the only solution is what Sadat did. What he did, he regained Sinai only when he went to war. Mm-hmm. And he put pressure on Israel. Now, I see in the panel here, I'm sorry to say, that we are afraid and shy to use the word, at least pressure Israel from the United States, at least.
Mr. Ghandour, I'm going to ask you, I have so many people waiting, so please, if you can
I'm
just
almost
conclude.
finished here. So, I mean, are we saying here, should we use the Sadat example? Okay. Or there is some hope of putting pressure on Israel? Thank you.
I have one more front line here, please, if you don't mind, and I'm going to go to the panel.
Question to Senator Baird. My name is Meir Javedan from Israel. Regarding your negotiations with Iran, I heard that a 3-month deadline is being suggested in terms of the negotiations with Iran. I think that's a mistake on the part of the United States. If, you know, there's a saying, if you're going to negotiate, you've got to negotiate properly, and if you're going to fight, you've got to fight properly. If you're going to negotiate with Iran, 3 months is not enough, because on the Iranian side, it's also not easy, and they're not going to be able to come to some kind of an agreement with you in 3 months. You need at least 1 year. There have been 30 years of animosities. So for these talks to be successful, you need that. My question is, when it comes to the Iranian nuclear program, you need to have leverages to come to some kind of a deal. What leverage does America have that equals or exceeds the value of the Iranian nuclear program?
I'm going to start with Mr. Saltanov. I'm going to start with you and go down this way, if you don't mind, so that you could all have the chance to address some of these questions. We have a specific proposal on the table on engaging Iran, if you want to start with that, and take any other parts of the question that you think relate to you, and we'll go down the line.
Well, I think it's a good idea. We should study it. Now we have a format. From my point of view, the task of this format should be fulfilled completely. No doubt that the regional parties can play, have capability, play a very constructive role in finding out solutions about the clarification of the Iranian nuclear programs and about on some other issues which provoke concerns from the regional parties. We should think about that.
Mr. Vice President.
Well, I think we are concentrating on a probability Iran could be a nuclear weapon country. While we have a nuclear weapon country, Israel is already has nuclear weapons. And the priorities are not good. The priorities are not there. We want to concentrate on Iran and leaving the other issues. Some people might think that we can do both. We can't. We have to choose some priorities. Either we stick with the Palestinian issue, the central issues, that was even the cause of what happened in Iran and elsewhere, even in Lebanon, Palestine, and Syria and other countries, or we are going to divert our priorities, and now the priority is Iran. Then later on, we will see ourselves engaged with Iran and leaving the central cause. So we have to choose this. We can't do both at the same time with the same level of priorities.
Do you agree, Prime Minister Dahabi? Do you agree with that? You have to do one thing and one thing only?
No, it's not one thing. I'm talking about priorities.
Yeah, but one at a time.
No, a priority is not one at a time. What is the essential? What is the most important thing? Whether our second choice will hurdle the first choice.
Explain yourself, please, because I didn't get it.
Well, you have priorities. Either we consider the Palestinian issue is a central issue, so we have to concentrate all our efforts. Those people who are looking for peaceful means or even using force, we have to find a way how to group all those people together to solve the principal issue, which is Palestine. Or we are going to divert this. We have no interference issues in the country is very important. It should be worked on. No clearing the region from nuclear weapon is very important. We have to work on that. But now we have to concentrate. We have to mobilize people and countries to go and discuss the issue of nuclear weapon on Iran. This will create a priority, and this will hurdle the other priorities.
Mr. Prime Minister.
Let me be very brief, and I'm always brief. I would like to quote Saab Ariqat, who talked from this podium 2 years ago. He said, what we want from Iran is not to erase Israel from the map. We want from Iran to establish a Palestinian state on the map.
All right. The man responsible directly into establishing, hopefully, the Palestinian state. Go ahead.
Very much so. I was asked a question, and I was asked to answer it in yes or no. The answer is yes, except that I challenged the crowd if they actually remember what the question was.
I'll tell you what the question was.
The question was, do I really believe, the way it was the question, do I really believe that we can secure our right to statehood and we can end the occupation having our state through nonviolence? Yes. And the answer is yes. I answered that yes. That's my firm belief. Yeah. But let me, although I was asked to answer yes or no, let me just add one qualifier, which is the following. That definitely is our firm view, and it will continue to be that. But the qualification I would add is the following. People have to understand, the world over has to understand, Israel has to understand, in order for there to be meaningful process, meaningful peace negotiation process, there has to be a politically viable partner on both sides of this divide. Our political viability is not without limitation. If the situation on the ground continues to be what it is, and the horizon for a peaceful resolution of this conflict continues to recede, under the heavy weight of 170 settlements and nearly 500 settlers in the West Bank, and ever expanding, I'm not really sure that there continue to be much political viability left in the Palestinian political system as we know it. Thank you.
Secretary General?
Thank you. I have 4 answers to make.
Brief though, because I want to get back to the audience.
The first one came from the gentleman representing the Strategic Studies Center for Strategic Studies, and he suggested that Turkey, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia should be involved in the negotiations with Iran on the nuclear question. Well, the idea is new, but it raises a lot of question marks. First of all, it seems that you see Iran as the main issue. We don't see Iran as the main issue. Or at least the vast majority of Arabs do not see it that way. That's number one. Number two, do you think that Turkey, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia would express their concern about Iran and ignore the other concern, the major concern about Israel? Why should they negotiate with Iran about a military program or about nuclear issues and not engage Israel in this? We have to have a balanced view. The real danger insofar as nuclear military programs are concerned is Israel, not Iran. However, I must say that we in the Middle East, all of us, do not need an additional military program, be it from Iran or any other country. We need to roll back the nuclear situation, and here comes Israel. The second point concerning the Jewish state, which Rima Khalaf has asked, the nature of the Jewish state. Of course, the mere talk about a Jewish state carries with it the prospects of racial discrimination, of religious intolerance, and of second-class citizens for 1/5 of the population of Israel. So those issues are so sensitive, so serious, so dangerous that we shouldn't take this term Jewish state simply, okay, why not? No, it has to be very cautiously calibrated. Number six, the question from our Syrian brother here. My answer about whether we have a partner, serious partner in Israel in peace, in one word. No, I'll answer in 3 words. So far, no. But the serious question about the rejection, if Israel rejects everything, no withdrawal from Syria, no withdrawal from Lebanon, no withdrawal, no state, no stopping of settlements, everything is no. I believe we will have to seriously consider, unanimously on our side, that we have to stop all our political efforts to negotiate with Israel.
I want to follow up on
all the
this.
repercussions that this carries, that, all right, then what else can people do except to resist the occupation?
So I just want to follow up quickly on this. Are you saying that you have other options? And what are they?
Why do you ask
Because you just said that right now.
Of course there are options.
What are they?
For example, I'll tell you just for the sake of
that you're willing
the
to
debate.
use.
If it is impossible to have 2 states, so that we must work for 1 state, for a no Jewish state, no Palestinian state, but one state that
binational state, you mean?
No, not binational.
What do you mean?
No, one state, they say there is democracy there, okay, fine. So this has to be the state for their all citizens, Christians, Muslims, Jews, Arabs, otherwise, with the same equal rights. This is the responsibility of the international community. But we should not continue to talk about 2 states, as the Prime Minister said. We shouldn't be euphoric when Mr. Netanyahu says, okay, we accept this, because it will, first of all, it's not true. Second, we should not spend any capital on trying to convince them. It is a given, either 2 states or 1 state, and their option.
Congressman, the notion that has been put to you is this, that there is possibility of ethnic cleansing, basically. And by the use of the purity of the Jewish state, what would you want to do to make sure this doesn't happen? And basically, how can you make sure that the world comes along?
Yeah. Several issues were raised, and I appreciate them all. And let me just go over, let me address, first of all, the gentleman from Syria. We are, in fact, in great dialogue increasingly. A number of members of Congress have visited Syria. I've met on several occasions with the ambassador in the States. So we're increasing the dialogue with Syria. So that's a positive step. When you ask about coming here to reorder, when I personally talked about redesign, the title of this session is Global Redesign Series. I'm not saying, personally we need to redesign the world. I'm saying the WEF is looking at, is the current situation working? If you believe the current situation is working fine, then there's no need to reorder it. I think we all need to look and say the current security situation here is not working very well, and all people have an interest in reordering how that works. Not the U.S. coming in and telling you how to do it, but all of us working together, because too many innocent lives are being lost and too many injustices are being perpetrated. So that would be where I'd come from that. The question of the Jewish state. I personally, if you look at our country as an example, we are probably the most diverse country on earth in terms of ethnicity, in terms of religious tolerance, and I personally value that as a model. So my own belief is that within Israel, every person who's a citizen of the country deserves equal protection, equal rights, equal opportunity, regardless of religious background. But let me also ask the same question within the rest of the region. Would people of different faiths, different ethnicities, have equal protection in other countries in this region? Would a synagogue be equally protected elsewhere in this region as would a mosque in Israel? And I think it's a fair question, and I don't think the answer is yes in many instances, and it should be yes, and that should be our goal if we're to really have security and equal treatment. On Iran, I think we really need to be a little bit honest here. Do we really think right now that it would be a good thing, a better thing, a safer thing for Iran to have a nuclear weapon? Now, how you deal with that issue is an interesting question, and what leverages can be applied, whether it's sanctions, etc. But I think we really need to be honest. It's a fine thing to say people may not like the fact that Israel may or may not have nuclear weapons, but it is an honest question to say, in this region right now, giving the rhetoric of Iran, would that be a good thing? I have some doubts about that, and to pretend that we believe that that's a good thing is for there to be yet another nuclear power, I think we have to be honest about. Finally, on the issue of pressure on Israel, I think there needs to be pressure. I think there needs to be pressure in both directions. I think there needs to be pressure from the Arab world on Hamas, on Hezbollah, on Iran, to stop some of the rhetoric and some of the attacks, and I think there needs to be pressure from the Arab world to stop any threat of terror. You have to stop, you have to join in that. Many parts of the Arab world are. At the same time, it's incumbent upon our country to insist, as our good friends here have said, that the terms of the roadmap be adhered to. It is not acceptable to me that in the middle of a negotiation process, settlements are expanding. I think we ought to say to Israel, stop the settlements now and put whatever pressure we need to make that happen. That's my belief.
How does Lebanon figure in your policies and what you're pushing forward? This is an important country where there is a lot of, it's an essential part of the puzzle when it comes to regional relations.
In Lebanon, I'm sorry.
Yes.
I think.
And given that there are elections of great importance, where do you see the U.S. going with the result of the elections? The Russian foreign minister already had said that if Hezbollah wins, the world has to deal with Hezbollah as a government. What about the United States?
It's going to be up to the Obama administration. My own belief is we create a difficult problem when we say on the one hand we want democracy, and then if an election turns out in a direction you didn't like, then you don't support democracy anymore. That's part of why I said I think we need to focus also on basic human rights, constitutional protections, etc. And I think we've obviously got to deal with the Lebanon situation also in a constructive manner. It is also part of the puzzle that has to be resolved.
Conditions or no conditions?
You mean in terms of who wins, or?
Well, in terms of, the quartet has conditions on Hamas. Are you proposing
My own belief is if someone
on
wins an election, you deal with that government. You have to have some discussions with that government. You have to at least engage, and I think President Obama has talked about this. It's one of the main differences, maybe a central difference in policy, is President Obama has said, we have dialogue with people. We don't just cut off dialogue and pretend we won't talk to people because we disagree with them. And that's central to solving these problems.
I'd like to have a follow-up on Amr Moussa, a question you asked him about the options open. And this reminds me of the speech of Vice President Biden to the AIPAC Jewish lobby in their annual conference a month ago. He talked about cessation of hostilities and freezing of settlements, etc. But at the end of the day, he said that when he was visiting Israel one day, he sat with Golda Meir, and she told him, look, don't worry about us. We have a secret weapon. And he thought that she will tell him about the atomic power. She said, no, we Jews, we have nowhere to go. I think the Palestinians, they have the same secret weapon. They have nowhere to go. Thank you.
I think, okay. I don't know where somebody from the organizers is. I think I have 3 more minutes left or 5 minutes. Somebody could tell me. Yeah. I don't know. How many minutes? I have 5? All right. I am not going to be able to go back to the audience. Forgive me. 5 minutes is not going to permit me to do that. Sorry about that. So because I need to give the last word to the panel. I apologize to you. It's an engaging discussion, and I hope you'll forgive me for not going back to you. But let me go this way now.
Two quick comments.
No, yeah, well, okay, but I also, 2 quick comments, but also want you to address the following question, please. Deal or stalemate in the region? What do you see for the next?
I see success, and I'll tell you 2 reasons. President Barack Obama has said 2 words that are central to his writings and his perspective. 1, the audacity of hope. The audacity of hope. We have to have that audacity, and he clearly does. Secondly, the fierce urgency of now. So many of the panelists here have talked about, we don't have time. We know what to do. And I think by that he means you just have to seize this opportunity in this moment. The president needs to sit down with the leaders of the region, including Israel, and say it must happen now. We don't need to start another long dialogue. We know what to do. It is time to do it. And for our part, the U.S. insists that it be done in a collaborative manner. But we are going to put pressure to do what needs to be done. Fierce urgency of now.
Thank you very much. Congressman Brian Baird.
Well, as the Congressman has said, the President of the United States is going to meet with the leaders of this region individually, and then comes up with a plan as we expect. Tony Blair said the other day that he expects to have a full plan in 5 to 6 weeks. That was 2 weeks ago. So in answering your question, we are all in favor of a deal. A stalemate is a very dangerous situation, which means that no deal. Stalemate means no deal. And we have to draw our own conclusions and decide on our options in this case. But let us be, for the time being, continue to be hopeful and call for a grand deal that would end the suffering of the Palestinians with the establishment of a viable Palestinian state and withdrawal from Syria and Lebanon. And then the area will enter into a new era altogether.
Thank you very much, Secretary General Amre Moussa.
Thank you very much, Raghida. Just to reiterate, number 1, the importance of insisting on accountability in the period ahead. And I'd add that to what Congressman Baird said about audacity of hope and need to seize the moment and do something about this. And that begins with insisting on accountability. That's key, regardless of which way we go with this globally. Second, that I really would like to remind everyone, the PLO, acting on behalf of Palestinian people, made a historic decision in 1988 to recognize Israel on 78% of historic Palestine. That's a fact. It's a fact that's been forgotten over the years of negotiation that did not lead to a conclusion. What really has happened actually over time is an erosion in the Palestinian position, and in some of the questions asked, what could we offer? I think if the world is looking for an answer to that question in the sense of more concessions on the part of Palestinians, that I think is the wrong door to knock on. We have actually made a painful and historic concession back then what has been missing in the 21 years since then, actually, is a recognition by Israel of our right as Palestinians to statehood on 22% of historic Palestine. That's what's required most fundamentally to end this conflict. Thank you.
Before I let you go, Prime Minister Salam Fayyad, will you be forming a government today?
We're working on it.
Today?
Well,
we need news. You know, I'm a journalist after all.
Well, actually, it's a lot more fun to be in this room with this nice audience than to be working on or thinking about forming government.
Thank you, Prime Minister Fayyad.
I think with this new administration's calling for change, I think not in the United States, but in the whole world, we are very optimistic. I think they are determined to go ahead with this peace negotiations. The Arab world unanimously, they are for peace right now. They have decided this on the Doha summit with the Arab Peace Initiative. I think time is ripe. I think there is a brief window of opportunity we have to grab in order not to go into stalemate.
Thank you very much, Prime Minister Nader Dahabi.
My turn?
Yeah, your turn, always your turn.
Thank you.
You don't need my permission, you go for it.
Well, I always...
You always...
Well, well, events now are at the peak of, at a very critical point. Either we return to a next round of wars and disagreement, interventions, disorder, etc., or we go for settlement, arrangements, negotiation, and a new order. I think we are heading for the second. People inside each of the countries are exhausted, and the region, all the region is exhausted. And I think there is a big hope now with the changes coming from outside, from the administration, from the Obama's administration, and even inside here in the region, there are more moderate and logical thinking taking place.
Thank you very much. Vice President Adil Al-Mahdi, thank you for participating.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Mr. Saltanov.
Yes, I think we shouldn't qualify this situation in the region as a stalemate or any others. I think that as the part of the global system, we are living in a transitional period from the Cold War era to a new world order. It is a process with its ups and downs, and with pauses in peace process or in settling other problems. I think we should concentrate on what to do, but not how to qualify the situation. We must pay more attention, we may apply more efforts in finding out solutions of this of the problem of these regions, and of course the main problem is the Arab-Israeli conflict and the establishing, the finding out to establish an independent Palestinian state.
Thank you very much, Minister Alexander Saltanov. This has been a wonderful panel, as you already have shown through your enthusiasm for asking questions. I once again apologize for those I could not get to. And of course, this session was the Future Middle East Peacemaking, part of the Global Redesign series. And I'm Raghida Dergham of Al-Hayat, and I thank you for your tolerance and participation. Thank you.